You're listening to the Escapecast Network.
It's from Mac Guys Only, episode number 471 for April 26th, 2026. A clean sweep for spring. Hey everyone, welcome back to From Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to discuss dusting off the digital detritus of our Macs are Eric Erickson. Hey Eric, how are you doing?
Mike, I'm doing well, thank you. Always willing to talk about detritus, so yeah.
Yes, and a little alliteration.
Yeah, digital detritus, that's very nice.
Yeah, there you go. And also joining us today is Mr. Darren Davies. Hi Darren, how are you?
Hi there. It's excellent. It's a full house today. Brilliant.
It is a full house today. And remember, we do normally record from Mac Guys Only live on YouTube the second and fourth Saturday of the month. And if you would like to come hang out, ask questions, and be part of our live studio audience, be sure to subscribe to the show at youtube.com/FMEOTV. Now, before we get to the main topic of the episode, Darren, you mentioned that you had a recommendation to make to listeners.
I do indeed. Yep, sure. I have always been a fan of David Pogue, a well-known Mac author who's been writing tomes and various things about the Mac for as long as the Mac's existed, really. And his new book, which is 50 Years of Apple, came up in my audiobook selections on Apple Books. And I thought, oh, that looks very good. I was meaning to buy it anyway. So yes, I purchased that, and that is my recommendation because I've listened to it now in its entirety. It's narrated by David himself, and it is rather an excellent book. It goes into quite a lot of detail. It's quite a long book about effectively the whole history of Apple over 50 years. So it's a tome and a half. This one is very, very, very good indeed.
Well, first, Darren, I can vouch for the fact that it's a tome and a half. Each physical book is over 3 pounds.
Yes, don't drop it on your foot.
Don't drop it on your foot. And while the audio book itself is not in color, the book, the physical print book, is in color inside, which is pretty amazing.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Now, how do I know all that? Because I literally have 12 boxes of his book in the foyer of my home as we are recording this.
Wow.
Why do I have 12 boxes of the book? Well,
you really are a fan.
I am going to add on to your recommendation because if folks also follow me and MacStock over at youtube.com/MacStock, well, then you already know the news. But if you don't, we had a One More Thing for MacStock 10 this summer, and we made the announcement on April 1st, which was Apple's actual 50th anniversary.
Excellent.
And joining me to make that announcement was none other than David Pogue.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
That's right. Yeah.
Why did David Pogue join me? Well, the reason he joined me is because David is coming to MacStock this summer. He is going to be there. Not only will he be there at MacStock, but Friday evening, we are going to host at MacStock an evening with David Pogue, which promises to be a ton of fun. He's bringing his keyboards. He's going to do music. He's going to perform his new original song, which was called Clap Along. But he's going to be doing all that. And following that, and here's why all the books are in my foyer, we're going to have a book signing at MacStock with David Pogue.
So cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I've got discounted copies of David's book available right now on the MacStock website at macstockconference.com. So you can order it now. And if you're coming to MacStock, it's going to be waiting for you and David's signature at MacStock. So if you are coming to MacStock, which is taking place July 10th, 11th, and 12th this summer, Friday's event is going to be something you definitely do not want to miss. And if you are not coming to MacStock, why the heck not? I mean, my gosh, we have got 3 full days of sessions, which, by the way, amounts to over 18 hours of content over 3 days. And then we've got a super session on troubleshooting Saturday night with Marty Gencius. And we've got the evening with David Pogue Friday night. And all of that is for MacStock's 10th anniversary. So 10 years of MacStock, 50 years of Apple. This is definitely going to be something that you don't want to miss. And if you use the coupon code FMEO, you can save $50 off your weekend pass right now. So if you're interested in any of that, and again, why wouldn't you be? Head over to macstockconference.com. You can pick up your weekend pass right now. That'll get you in for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at MacStock. And if you are up for it, we're also partnering with Ecamm this year. They're going to be doing an Ecamm Creator Camp on Thursday, the 9th. So we have a combo ticket for Creator Camp plus MacStock or just MacStock itself. And you can check all that out at macstockconference.com. So there's my tie-in to your recommendation, Darren.
Fabulous. Excellent. In fact, it's probably a good idea to buy both the physical book and the audio book. Exactly, buy both. There you go, Eric. That's the thing.
Yeah. Get the audiobook, get the physical book, and come to MacStock and get the book signed by David while you're there. Yeah.
That would be perfect. The perfect triumvirate, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, David Pogue, when I bought my first Mac, I bought Mac for Dummies. This is like so long ago, I don't want to even say. But it was written by David Pogue. And I remember I just liked his style, and he was funny, and it was just really just so well done. And it really taught me. So I kind of always read his books since, especially the stuff. And of course, his New York Times. And no, it's just terrific. That's just awesome. That's a coup.
If you have any library of books on the Mac or Apple, chances are pretty good David's name is going to come out of that.
David wrote it, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get on with a little spring cleaning. Darren, your timing on suggesting the topic was perfect, because it just so happens that I spent no short amount of time last weekend cleaning up files on my Mac, organizing stuff, putting stuff where it should be, clearing out old apps and downloads, general spring cleaning to make room for a new year of junk to accumulate on my Mac. And then you suggested that we take on the topic of spring cleaning our Macs. And that got me thinking.
It's a good time to do it. It's spring.
It's just about spring. It's just about spring. And that got me thinking, what does spring cleaning mean? And I think the first question that I always ask, and the question that anyone who sets out to do this needs to ask, is, what's your goal? What is it that you're setting out to do when you sit down to spring clean your Mac? Is it to delete stuff from your Mac and free up space? Is it to organize things better? Is it to, go through your list of apps? Everything that I just said, which one of those is your goal? Or is it a combination of all of them? And of course, we can't forget the most important question: are my backups working? Because before doing any of this stuff, you're going to want to make sure that your Time Machine backups are running, or that you've run a full backup of your Max drive using Carbon Copy Cloner or ChronoSync or SuperDuper, or maybe both. But having said that, where does one start? And what is your goal? Now, I personally tend to break this down into a few simple tasks that combined can make a huge difference to my Mac. And that is file cleaning and organization, application cleanup, organizing email, which is something I think a lot of people don't think about, and I have some notes on that. And then all the nitty gritty, and I know we've got some gritty that you want to nitty on, Darren, when we get to that in a little bit. But Eric, I'm going to throw it over to you first, and I want to kind of find out where you start when you set out to clean up your Mac and get things organized again.
Well, one of the things I use often, that I use daily, obviously, I have it's a Hazel, and I set that to run. So as far as like file organization and file cleaning and stuff like that, I have that constantly running in kind of all my major folders. So um, desktop downloads, um, not the applications folder, but other ones that it'll go through, and it essentially kind of especially in the downloads folder and even on the desktop, because I don't like having the desktop full of like a whole bunch of stuff.
Uh-oh.
There's so many
Don't look at my
people I
Mac.
see that
Yeah,
with it.
don't look at Mike's desktop.
I know. And so I basically, I put stuff out in the desktop, or I have stuff that's downloaded, but as it ages there, Hazel will take it and grab it and stick it in a folder. And ultimately it'll at some point end up in the trash. And then I also have Hazel deal with the trash as well. So um it monitors that, and once it reaches a certain size, it starts deleting stuff, or I think it's after like 2 weeks as well. um, the other thing that Hazel does too is when you delete apps, it will go out, and it's pretty good at doing this. It will go out and find all the extra stuff that goes along with the app and allow you to remove that as well. It'll present that to you and, um, you know, say, do you want to delete this too or keep it or whatever? And so I usually always hit delete. So that's one thing that I have now. My main Mac now has an 8 terabyte drive, so or
Wow.
storage. So I haven't been as worried about it as I have been in the past. But another thing that I have to deal with, because I work and edit videos a lot in Final Cut Pro, is Final Cut Pro always creates a bunch of rendering files,
Yeah.
and those things really get huge. And it is one of those things where when I run something like Gremlin or some sort of size browser, I use Daisy Disk a lot. It'll oftentimes be some of the biggest files that I have. And so one thing I've gotten for that is something called Final Cut Pro Cleaner. I think it's Final Cut, yeah, Library Cleaner, Final Cut Pro Library Cleaner. And it's kind of a little different looking, app, but it works really well. And you can actually drop a file or a folder full of, actually a folder full of folders of Final Cut Pro project or library files, and you can have it'll just pull all those out and then display them, and then you could say whether you want to get rid of it or not. But it makes it really easy to delete all that stuff. Otherwise, I was kind of like, always having to go into um, open the package and dig into the project file and then delete it that way. Um, so that's another thing I do quite a bit to keep things, sort of, you know, decent. I did try doing the Clean My Mac, and it worked for some things, but then for other things, it seemed like I had some trouble. So I just mainly manually kind of, check and make sure I don't have folders or files, just too huge of files and stuff like that. And the other thing I do too is I have, a disk station, and I also have another OWC RAID drive that I'll just offload stuff, especially like the videos and stuff like that. And again, it's one of those things that Hazel takes care of when it reaches a certain age. I think 5 weeks it starts. If it's the 5 weeks old, it'll move it off to there, and then eventually it'll work onto the disk station. So I guess I'm one of these people who likes to automate stuff. I don't like to have to, do it, but I still am pulling out the size browser, like Daisy Disk or whatever, and going through and doing that. But as far as like anything else deeper, I probably don't. And I'm sure you'll mention something. I'm like, oh yeah, I do that too. But I can't think of anything right now. So
That's a really good idea to automate things as you go along. Yeah, that's another really good approach to at least, especially for file automation. Yeah, so automate the cleanup of files as you go rather than once a year. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
a good approach. I like it.
Well, it's because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to do the same thing more than once. So
Well, we like to joke like that, but when you say you're lazy, you did have to sit down and write all these routines within Hazel. I mean, it doesn't just come with these
right,
routines, right? You had to write them. I'm a
right.
little curious about one thing that you said where, it takes the stuff that you have on your desktop. I imagine you work similarly to me in a certain regard in that I like to put projects I'm currently working on the desktop and then I move them elsewhere later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And since I don't always finish all my projects, there's a lot of stuff all over my desktop. But so one thing you mentioned was you use Hazel to automate the process of moving them elsewhere. How does Hazel determine where those files are to be moved?
So it's pretty basic. A lot of times the stuff that ends up on my desktop, I don't worry too much about keeping. It's like just stuff I needed for, being really handy. And if it is, I'll move it off to, you know, uh, Dropbox or, Synology Drive or whatever. But what it does do is it'll take files and then it'll sort into subfolder. So it'll take like PDF files and then um like it basically after they've been sitting there for a while, like a few weeks or whatever, it'll create a folder and it'll date the folder of whatever the date is, and then it'll um copy all the PDF files in there, and they'll say such and such date PDF files or whatever.
Hmm.
And so it'll sit in there, and then I could go through there. But after a few weeks, it will move that stuff into the trash. So I do have to get in there at some point, and but then it sits in the trash for So it's like it's one of those things. Like if I can't get to it within a few months, then there's probably either I don't care about it or there's something wrong with me.
And that was going to be my follow-up is you
Yeah.
mentioned that not only does it then organize your stuff, but it moves it to the trash. I'm like, well, do you really want that to happen? But it does sound like you do. I
Yeah.
I always treat the trash as a very intentional action.
Yeah.
If it goes in there, I don't ever expect it to come out again.
Yeah.
Even though we have the ability to recover files from the trash, when I put something in there, it's with intention, and so I don't anticipate ever needing that file again. And so I personally, I'd be a little nervous about letting Hazel just say, toss this in the trash. But
Yeah, I don't do it with everything. And I was going to say I do also have something that backs up the trash. So I have like
Backs up the
trash recover or
trash. Wow,
something.
that's a new one.
So if I so and it lasts for a while. And so if I do get rid of something like, oh yeah, then
I'm
I'll
glad I backed up my trash. Excellent.
yeah, I know. And sad. Yeah.
well, now
Oh,
let's see. Time Machine does back up the trash, right? If I restore a Mac from a Time Machine backup, I believe the trash is there after it's restored.
I think you're
that's a
right.
good question. I'm not sure. Yeah, well, perhaps you're right. I'm not sure.
I haven't tried that actually. I should just see if I can like go in the trash now.
Now, one thing I don't do though is I don't enable the feature in the Finder where it automatically empties the trash.
No, I don't do that either because I have
No,
Hazel.
bit too scary.
But yeah,
Like with putting stuff in the trash, I also empty the trash with intention. So
oh yeah,
it's
yeah,
something I want to have a little control over just in case I made that mistake. But generally, if it goes in there, I know I want that gone. Unlike some people I know who treat the trash as a storage location. And
Oh dear, no, that's not a good
I
plan.
literally know people who do this, and they pull
yeah.
stuff back out of it again as they need it. I'm like, well, don't put it in there
Don't do
because
that. It's not a
Do
filing
that.
cabinet.
if you put it in there, count on it
Yeah,
being gone at some point.
right.
That's it.
There's a little special button in there. It says empty trash. It's
Right.
not in any other folder. It's yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
That's really interesting. So I'll count Hazel as a specialty app, and certainly it becomes
Yeah.
more specialized because of the fact that you've created these routines that it then acts upon on your Mac. But then you also have this library cleaner, and that really piqued my interest because I don't work with Final Cut anywhere near as much as you do, but when I do, I'm very aware of these rendered files, and I do, through Final Cut's interface, clean them up when
Yeah.
I'm done with a project. But I didn't realize that it would be a good idea or even possible to use a third-party utility to clean them up without affecting the library file. Like, what doesn't Final Cut Pro get confused and say, "Hey, these files I expect to be here aren't here"?
No, it'll just re-render. It'll
Mm,
just say, "Oh, I gotta, you know, re, you know, re-render these files, or I have to create their slow motion and stuff, optical flow, and do stuff like that." And I kind of do that in the sense that I don't have stuff deleted immediately, or like it has to age in there a little bit before it gets deleted. But I don't like throw stuff in the trash or have stuff put in the trash with the thought of like I might take that out again. I'm one of these people
Just
that would be a
for
pack
safety.
rat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be a pack. I am a pack rat, and I'm a digital pack rat as well. So
absolutely.
I need to have something that says I'm going to delete this after so long if you don't, or once it hits a certain size of percentage of your drive, and so otherwise I would have like I would look at my drive and 4 terabytes of seriously, I would throw stuff in
Wow.
there and then say, I'll empty it later. I never actually do it. It's just, yeah.
Well, if it's any indication of the type of digital pack rat I am, Eric, I literally have a project on my external drive. I have an 8 terabyte external drive where I keep old Final Cut projects, and there is one in there of a Lambeau Field project that you sent to me at one time to see if I could
That's
do.
okay.
There was a little green screen removal or something like that,
Yeah, it was
and
terrible.
and,
Yeah.
and we worked through that project, and there's absolutely no reason for me to keep that. And yet there, on that
It's okay.
drive, is
Yep.
the Eric Final Cut Pro project. Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
So there you
Yeah,
go.
and I've got other projects that we worked on too. Mike, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just do. It's like
No
I
idea.
just never know. You might need it.
Might need it.
Might need it one day.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
one of the tools you mentioned, Daisy Disk, is something that ties in very closely with tools that we use. And I'll let Darren mention that in a bit because he uses one very similar to me. But that throws it over to you, Darren. Where do you start? How do you go about the process of spring cleaning your Macs?
Right. Right. I very my approach is very similar to what you mentioned, Mike. Actually, splitting things up. So for me, there's the system level cleaning, and then there's the file level cleaning, and application kind of management and cleaning and so on sort of sits in the middle of those two. So that's what I generally do. So the Mac can be a little bit complex in where it stores things, like its caches and temporary files. And it's not really just one place. It's sort of like spread over about 16 different places. So I won't go into too much depth about where all the paths are, because in theory you should probably say there be dragons, because if you do go delving into cache and temp folders that you're not quite sure what effect is going to happen if you do clear them out,
Yeah.
you have to be pretty careful. So I tend to, I used to do it manually at the terminal every spring clean. It used to take me days, and it wasn't fun. So I tend to now leave those system level cleanup side of things to automated tools and tasks. So yeah, so I split it up into system level cleaning, then application cleaning, which is sort of in between system and file level cleaning, and then the last stage, which is all the files I've generated and where are all those big files and so on. So my approach is to see where the lay of the land is first, check where I am now, like what big stuff do I have, what files do what applications do I not use, what is still trying to auto start that shouldn't be because I've not used that app in ages and so on. Build up a list of things that I would like to clean up, and then I go into the tools to clean up the system, clean up the applications, and then clean up the files, and then I'm done for my spring cleaning task for the year.
That's really interesting because the process that you go through is almost exactly the opposite of the way that I approach it.
So perfect. Oh, that's really good to know.
Well, you start with the system files, which I think, similar to Eric, are one of those things that, it's fine. It can be in there. I don't care. If out of sight, out of mind. I don't worry too much about those, except when it comes to application cleanup. And in the application cleanup step, which I'll mention in just a moment, I use a particular tool called App Cleaner, which helps highlight some of the system files that maybe can be removed from the Mac. And Eric mentioned Hazel does something similar to that as well. And I think you use one called Pair Cleaner, Darren. So we'll talk about
Pair
those.
Cleaner to clean up applications, yeah. But I like you say, I do look at the OS cleaning first, because I also do OS optimization side of things too. And that ties in with, so it's not just cleaning for the OS side, it's also optimization for it too.
Now, as far as cleaning up files on the Mac, I have used tools to do that. One that you mentioned, I used to use one called Disk Inventory X or Disk Inventory 10, however you want to refer to it.
Yeah.
But I've since moved to Grand Perspective, because Grand Perspective, like Daisy Disk, is one of those things that gives you a visual overview of your drive's usage.
It's very nice.
It is very nice, and it's great because you see these giant blocks, and you're like, what the heck is this giant block? And by just hovering your cursor over it, you're like, oh, that's the inbox from my mail client. Okay, great. I'll leave that one alone. What's this other giant block? And you can work through these giant blocks visually and try to zero in on the files that are taking up the most space on your drive. But I don't default to that. Instead, I default to just using the Finder. And in the case of using the Finder and my particular approach of looking at what's on my desktop, looking at what's in my documents, looking what's in my movies folder, to Eric's point with Final Cut and the giant render files that it creates, I also look in my downloads folder. I don't automate any of the process of getting rid of it, but I will say that going through those folders, list view is your friend. If you typically work in icon view, switch to list view. And the reason to switch to list view is a little extra tip I would like to insert into the show at this point. A little for Mac is only quick tip bonus, if you will. And that is that list view offers a really cool feature that a lot of people overlook. In fact, I overlooked it for the longest time. And that is the ability for the Finder to calculate folder sizes. By default, when you're going through a folder in list view, folders don't show their size. They just show a couple hyphens, a couple dashes. You don't know how big that folder is unless you quick look it, or you get the properties on it or something like that and sit there and wait for the Mac to calculate, the size of that folder for you. But this little quick tip here, if you are in list view, and you do have to be in list view to be able to see this option, go to the Finder's view menu, go to show view options, and then check the little box for calculate all sizes. And when you calculate all sizes, the Finder's list view will then start to show you how big each of the folders is, in addition to the size of the files that are in there. So this is really, really useful in the downloads folder. It's really useful in the documents folder and other folders on your Mac. If you're in list view, you can sort the list view by size. And if you're seeing the smallest up front, just click the list view column header again, and it'll resort it either ascending or descending, depending on how you've clicked it. But when you can see the largest files and folders within there, that makes it very easy to zero in on what you want to get rid of, especially if you're doing it in a very deterministic manner. You're going through your documents folder, you're going through your downloads folder, you're going through your desktop folder, whatever it is. That's where I tend to lean a little bit more on the Finder versus something like Grand Perspective or Daisy Disk or something like that.
Yeah, I do it completely the other way around. Sorry, Mike, as you say, I do things completely the other way around, because to me, Grand Perspective does all those things, and I like to see the result of the file system across all folders. So things that I wouldn't necessarily check. So for instance, one of the things that can get rather big is if you turn on a video screensaver. So it downloads a video screensaver and it sits there, and you think, oh, that looks good, and then you turn it off and don't use it, but the file's still there.
It's there.
So if you don't know which path to specifically check for, you will never find that it's sitting there taking up lots of space. So Grand Perspective would do that. And one of the other quick tips for Grand Perspective particularly is when you display it and it shows you those big blocks of what's taking up space, including those lovely video screensavers that look fabulous, but you forget you've downloaded and it's still sitting there. You could right click on that big blob and say show in Finder. So then that switches you over to the Finder view that you're just talking about now to show you where exactly the path and where those big files are sitting, and it points you to that big file so you can deal with it within the Finder. So that's particularly useful. Just look for the big blocks, right click on the big blocks and click on show in Finder, and you're done.
Yeah.
There is a benefit to that, and that is it drops you directly into the corresponding library folder where those files are kept. Yeah.
And you don't have to hunt for it manually.
Some of those can be quite deep, yeah.
Yeah. Another tip on the list view though, Mike, too, which is it's great you brought that up, because the other thing you can do is unfold all of you can essentially see, 10 folders deep, all of the files within a folder. So instead of like with an icon view, you double click, with essentially one keystroke, you can just, show every file that's in that folder and all the subfolders of that folder, and actually see, even, have it show you the size and everything else. Like you said, have it sorted by size, and, immediately which file's taking up a ton of space. And yeah, no, it's definitely a really handy view. That's for sure. I use icon view more often.
Me too.
As my default thing, but I do use list view for those cases.
Yeah. And by the way, there's something else. This is just a little fun setting in the list view. You can change the icon size. By default, it's this teeny tiny little icon that does kind of show you what that file is. But again, you have to be in list view. But if you go to show view options, in addition to calculate all sizes, there's also a little icon size option, and you can go between the teeny tiny little icon and you can go with a little bit larger icon. So for those who like icon view, like me and like you, because I do kind of like to have that visual representation of what's in there, you can put the larger icons in there as well, which is pretty cool.
Slick.
One other thing I wanted to mention, though, there's your desktop, which again tends to be kind of this collection point for me of current projects I'm working on. Documents folder, which tends to be where I store things for long term and don't really work out of the documents folder all that much. So I don't worry about cleaning that up too frequently, because it is things that I purposely put in there for longer term storage. But you mentioned Dropbox, Eric, and you mentioned how you will sometimes have Hazel move stuff over to Dropbox. One of the ways that, and Dropbox is great, and iCloud Drive is great, and, Microsoft Cloud Drivey, Wivey, whatever they call it, is fine too. All these are
Yep.
great, but one of the things that they do now is they tend to encourage you to keep your stuff in the cloud and
Yep.
only bring it down when you want it. But
Yeah.
there is the option to make stuff available all the time. And
Yeah.
I have this tendency to put big stuff in there and make it store in the cloud, but then the computer I put it in there on, the Mac I put it in Dropbox on, has this big giant file, and I forget to make it online only. So that is one thing that you want to, if your goal is to clear up storage space on your Mac, going through your cloud storage and in the case of Dropbox, right-clicking a file and saying make online only, so you get the little cloud icon next to it, so you know it's stored in the cloud, and this is just a little visual representation of that file. In iCloud, you right-click and you say remove download. Same thing happens. It creates a little visual representation, puts a little cloud on it, so you know that it actually is in the cloud and not taking up as much space on your Mac. That's important to do too, because using Gram Perspective, I happened to notice that I had a 6 gigabyte file in my Dropbox that I neglected to make online only. So that's when I added that note to my list of notes of things to go through here.
Brilliant.
And then the downloads folder. I do tend to keep things in the downloads folder longer than I should. And I also have zip files that have been unzipped in there. And now I've got the zip and the unzipped version of it in there. And so going through the downloads folder, I like to keep old installers of major versions of certain applications. Not all applications, but certain applications. I like to keep the major versions of those installers. So I move those out of my downloads folder to an external drive that I plug in from time to time and just kind of throw stuff on it. It's one of those drives that if the stuff on it gets lost, I really don't care that much, but it's nice to know that it's there if I need it. So that's what I tend to do with that. But going through the downloads folder, because some of those get really, really large, is important as well. Unlike the trash, I do tend to treat the downloads folder as a bit of a storage folder. And I know I shouldn't do that, but I do that.
I do that too.
Yeah. So I do tend to go into the downloads rather frequently to pull stuff out of it again that I know is in there.
In fact, I've done that, and I've downloaded files that I already had in the downloads folder.
Me too.
And I'm like, what's that? Why is it putting a 1 after that? It's like, yeah. One thing I was going to say too, when I copy files off, and I have Hazel do this too, it was something I think I learned from the classic Mac days, and I don't think it still works, but I'll have it, I'll have Hazel, when it moves files off to a separate drive or external drive, it'll create an alias there of that file so I can go to it with the drive. So as long as the drive's plugged in, I can double click the alias. It'll take me to that file, so I don't have to hunt for it. But I know in the old days, if you did that and then the drive was removed, it would say insert or plug in this drive on the old Mac. And I don't think that works anymore, which is kind of too bad, because it would actually give you the name of the drive to plug in.
Yeah, I don't believe it does that anymore. I believe now if you click the alias, it's just going to say that destination can't be found. Do you want to remove the alias? No, I don't want to remove the alias.
No.
Yeah. No. I do that with Dropbox, by the way. Ever since Apple required cloud storage providers to move into your library folder, buried down deep, and you can't get directly to it, I do have an alias to Dropbox in my home folder where it always existed in the past, so that I can still continue to work the way that I used to work.
Used to. Yep. I do too.
That's actually a really good tip too, is to use aliases to point to these things to, when you do move files offline or to an external drive, create an alias to that so you can continue to work with the files the way that you used to work with them. They're no longer taking up storage space on your Mac's primary SSD. You've got an 8 terabyte SSD in your Mac?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Holy
that is
cow.
very impressive.
Yeah. Well, it's a MacBook Pro. Not sure why I did it, but well, the
I'm
thing
not
is,
sure why
part of
you
it
did
is
it.
I could keep
Your
video
finger
on it and
slipped.
work instead of working on an external drive with video, I
Yeah,
can actually
yeah,
keep it all internally. And for whatever reason, that actually works better. That it works
yeah.
faster. I mean so that
Well,
was a
the
big
onboard
reason.
storage is always faster, and yeah,
Yeah.
there's much less juggling around. If you are doing video editing, having a really big onboard storage
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
really useful. Yeah,
Yeah.
much less
Yeah.
juggling and much higher speed.
Yep.
But you should try living in the storage I've got. You won't last a day.
I always thought I was being excessive putting 2 terabyte drives on my Macs, but
Yeah.
Wow.
That is excessive too.
it is a little. So yeah, but I do always put 2 terabytes in them if not on portable Macs because they're not my primary ones. So I think I only have a one
Desktop.
terabyte on my MacBook Pro.
Uh,
All right, cool. So what about application cleanup? We briefly mentioned some of the apps that we use. Obviously, if it's from the App Store, Apple encourages you to just take the app and throw it in the trash, right? The problem
yep.
with that, of course, is that unless it's a very, very straightforward install, the uninstall process doesn't get rid of all the cruft, all the extra junk that's sitting around from an app that you really are never going to use again. And that's where using an app like App Cleaner or Pair Cleaner or Hazel can really add a lot to the app removal process and free up a lot more space on your Mac's drive. There are a couple notes I wanted to mention about that, though, in terms of if the app is not from the Mac App Store. And the first is the app licensed? If the app is licensed, it's always a good idea to go into the app's preferences or settings, I should say now, go into the app settings or into the app's license manager and deactivate it before you uninstall it so that you can more
Yeah.
easily reinstall it again later, either on the same Mac or a different Mac. Not every
Yeah.
app developer makes it easy to
No.
delicense something when you no longer have the app. Very often it involves communicating directly with their support team and having them manually deactivate it on the back end if you didn't take that extra step of deactivating it before you uninstalled it. So that's something important to keep in mind. If the app has an uninstaller, and some apps do still have uninstallers, you may find one within the original download file. If you have it, if you keep it in your downloads folder, like Eric and I do, you may have the
Yeah.
uninstaller in there, or you may find it buried somewhere on your Mac. Sometimes it's buried in a library folder along with
Yeah.
the other preferences for that app. And you don't find it until you take that app and drag it into something like Pair Cleaner and you see this uninstaller listed. And you're like, well, what the heck? Why am I not using that instead? So look to see if the app has an uninstaller because that will often do a very good job of getting rid of all the cruft as well. And finally, if it seems very involved, don't hesitate to search the developer support pages for instructions to uninstall. Often very good resources on there, sometimes not, but often very good resources for getting rid of every little bit and bobble of an app that has dug its tentacles into the library folder of your Mac. So those are just a few little quick hints for getting rid of apps that don't come from the Mac App Store. But otherwise, for the most part, I use App Cleaner. It's from Free MacSoft. And the only tip I would have there, open up App Cleaner, you drag your app into it, and it instantly gives you a list of all the related files for that application. My only tip there is pay attention to the files that it discovers, because some apps will actually store your data and settings within the app bundle or other locations that may be shown, and you don't necessarily want to delete that, especially if it stores content that you have created within the app bundle, and that does still happen. It shouldn't, but it still happens from time to time. So pay attention to everything that's listed, but if everything looks good, just leave it all checked and let App Cleaner do its job. If you're not sure about a particular file or folder, if you're not sure if it should be deleted or kept, Just unselect it and let App Cleaner take care of the rest. App Cleaner is a pretty straightforward app. Now, I know Pair Cleaner, Darren, is a little bit more involved. It has a few more functions to it than App Cleaner does. Why do you default to Pair Cleaner instead of something like App Cleaner?
I've tried both actually, but one of the reasons I like Pair Cleaner is the user interface is really good. The way it presents the related files to something you want to delete is very deep and instructive. And the way it presents what you're going to remove is just a nice user interface. And like you say, there's some other things that it can do. It has a very it's sort of like a hidden special feature called like liposuction in a way. So what it does, it's scary, isn't it? What it does is it looks at a fat binary application which has both is it called that anymore? The developers, yeah, exactly, yeah. So there's a fat binary application which has both Intel and ARM-based code inside. And what lipo function from Pair Cleaner can do is to go in and take away the application bundle parts that are not needed for your system that you have. So if you have an ARM-based system, you don't need all that Intel code. You can strip it out and get rid of it. So that means the app launches quicker, it takes up less memory, it works quicker, and it takes up less storage space. And so it's a bit, I think, temporary use at the moment because although macOS 27 is going to be coming out to not support Intel code bases anymore, there's still going to be quite a lot of apps deployed that still support Intel for the next probably 4 or 5 years or more. So that Intel code base is still going to be sitting inside app binaries. So one of the special features that Pair Cleaner can do is to strip those things out that you don't need. But again, there be dragons. You got to know what you're doing with it. You don't want to just fling this at the entire system and say, like, strip out everything. And it also, Pair Cleaner is very good because it won't even try to strip out something that it thinks should not be stripped. So for instance, it won't touch the parts of macOS applications built into macOS itself. So those that are both Intel and ARM based won't be touched by Pair Cleaner. It will leave those alone. So it's quite intelligent in what it suggests that you can clean with the LiPo mode. But again, that will probably go away to some extent when macOS 27 comes out, because the application bundles for built-in apps for macOS itself will be then ARM only anyway. So that issue is no longer something that has to be thought about. So it's just for this moment. I find it quite useful. For instance, there's if you look, I was quite amazed by the application size of the new Affinity suite, which was like 4 gigs for the application. So that's pretty large. But once I set it through to go through LiPo, so it took away all the Intel bits that I didn't need on my Apple Silicon machine. It went down to a 2 gig application instead. So that was much better.
And now it doesn't work, but it's only 2 gig. I'm just kidding.
Well,
Yeah.
No,
still works.
that's awesome.
and for those who are wondering about the terminology, that's a universal binary.
Exactly, a universal binary, otherwise known as a fat binary or something. Well, it used to be called that, but yes.
Honestly, I'm not sure I would do that. How do you feel about that, Eric? I don't know that I would go through the app and rip stuff out of it just because I may not need it on that particular Mac.
Well, I guess it would depend upon how pressed I was for space, where every little bit counts, especially if it wasn't an app I relied on tons. I know what you mean though, but it sounds like Pair Cleaner must be pretty good. That but it sounds scary. But I wonder if it's one of those things that sounds more scary than it actually is, or I don't know.
Well, I think part of it is because it's a never-ending cycle of every time the app gets updated, you have to go through and do it again.
Yeah, so that's why I
Right.
only do it to a handful of apps. I've only done it to about
Oh,
three
I
or four
see.
apps. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I wouldn't do it for everything, but something really
No.
big like that, like the Affinity Suite, a 4 gig app, it includes a lot of stuff that I'm not going to be using. And when you, well, at least currently, when you do load an app in on macOS, it loads the entirety of what's in the bundle. Um, so if there's stuff in there that your system is never going to use or touch, then you're taking up more memory. Although, having said that, the Mac is particularly very good at handling memory management, so it doesn't stress the Mac out too much, having stuff there that it's never going to use. But yeah, I'd just like to slim down some of the big apps, uh, but only a handful of the ones that I use, like the Affinity Suite. So I just do it with about 3 or 4 apps.
How does Hazel compare to all of this? We know the other things you're using Hazel for, but you also mentioned in passing its ability to do app cleaning as well. How does it compare?
It's a little different than Pair Cleaner or App Cleaner, but it's similar in the sense that it essentially when you drag an app to the trash or command delete an app, it takes a few seconds, but it will then prompt you with something with all the files that are part of it. And it actually has them all checked. And then you can go through and uncheck any files that you want to keep, or say, I just want to keep everything or delete everything. Um, so it's pretty handy that way. I mean, it goes through and it shows you all the external files that it thinks belongs to that app and then gives you the choice whether you want to get rid of them or not. So, and so far, I've had great luck with it. I mean, I've been using it for years, and I've never like deleted anything like, oh shoot, now, you know,
Reinstall from the downloads folder.
right,
Wow.
right,
Or the
exactly,
trash.
right, or the trash, yeah. And it does actually have that
Uh,
too. It does. It throws it into the trash, but it does it in such a way that you can find it to restore. Um, because there have been situations where I don't know if I deleted an app, but then I've reinstalled it or whatever, maybe because I was having trouble. And then Hazel will present you with, hey, you just reinstalled this app. Do you want to have, you know, it reinstall these external, all these ancillary files?
Hmm.
And, and a lot of times I'll say no because I'm, you know, having trouble with the app or whatever. But
well, one of the other things that Pair Cleaner can do is to show you orphan files. So if you've deleted an application, say for instance you use the built-in Mac OS applications deleter, which it's sort of hidden within settings,
It
general
is. Yeah.
storage. So when you click on the I next to the applications list there, that's the Mac's built-in uninstaller. But like you say, it's not a very sophisticated one. It only gets rid of the application. So one of the things that Pair Cleaner can do is to go off and find um, missing parts. So things that are still on your system that don't um, point back to anything else that should also have been installed that have been like removed in a different way. So, and that includes things like startup items that you have that don't point to a master application that they go with, for instance. So all those little orphan application bits, it can also find those because it knows that the
that's
associated
nice.
file that should go with it doesn't exist. So it'll list those as a list of orphan files. So that's quite a handy feature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's really
incredibly
nice.
handy. And you just brought up something that I did not have in my notes, but I do think is very important to talk about here. And that is the Mac's built-in ability to remove some of this stuff for you. I've railed against one-trick pony apps in the past, and certainly App Cleaner is one of those one-trick pony apps. And I will also point out that Though I don't use it, Eric, you triggered the memory in my head that App Cleaner does have what they call a smart delete mode. So when you turn on smart delete in App Cleaner and you throw an app away in the trash, it will do exactly what Hazel does too and go and find all those additional files and
Files.
trash those
Yeah.
as well, which is cool. And then the other thing it will do is allow you to show protected apps. In other words, apps that Apple doesn't really want you to delete, but
Yeah.
App Cleaner will let you if you really want it to. But let's talk about the built-in storage. This is under the Mac's system settings, under General, and then Storage, because there are some very good tools in there that people might consider using, not the least
Yeah.
of which is optimizing storage of your Mac. So in other words, you can, through the built-in storage functionality of your Mac's system settings, automatically remove movies and TV shows that you've already watched. Now, I don't tend to do that. I tend to always stream to my TV via the set-top box, so I don't tend to do that. But there's a ton of folks out there who do watch movies and TV shows on their Mac, and in order to do so, it may download them so that you can watch them offline. Well, you can turn on optimized storage, and that's something very important to be aware of. There's also the store in iCloud functionality. So you can turn on store in iCloud, and that will turn on your desktop and documents, messages will get stored in iCloud, as well as things like photos and what else gets stored in iCloud.
Oh, there's quite a few things. I would recommend clicking on the little eye next to each one of the things that are mentioned in that list. So it gives quite a good little explanation about what will happen if you enable the feature. So clicking on that eye will show you, that would be quite a useful option, and so on. So you can go through and choose what may or may not be a good option for you for.
Well, I'm
saving
not to
space.
the little eye yet, Darren. I'm not to the
Oh,
little
I
eye.
see. Oh, sorry.
We're
I
almost
jumped
to
right
the
ahead.
little eyes. This is actually just a button. This is a button under the storage tab that you can
Yes.
click store in iCloud, and you get the option to flip a little slider to do your desktop and documents.
I see you were coming to the little eyes. There you
I'm
go.
coming to the little eye here. We're getting there. And messages. So there's two sliders under store in iCloud, and those are the two sliders that you can turn on. And then there's the optimize storage button that when you click that will automatically remove movies and TV shows. And then there's also empty trash automatically, which, we didn't ask you, but Eric and I both said we don't set empty trash automatically on the Mac.
Yeah.
Do you empty trash automatically, or do you manually
I
empty it?
set mine. Well, I'm a bit of a minimalist anyway. Well, try to be. But I'm also a little bit of a digital minimalist too. So I try to. But I'm not as minimalist as Steve Jobs was, where he had like a room with a stereo in the middle and you had to sit on the floor. So not quite that minimalist. But I am a digital minimalist if I can get away with it. So I do have my bin set to delete permanently immediately. So I don't have an empty bin option because there's never anything in the bin, because when I decide to throw something away, it gets thrown away immediately and there's nothing, no file, just gone straight
You're
away.
so British. The bin.
The bin, of course, yes.
Well, there is a third button under storage on your Mac, and it's to empty trash automatically. And if you click
option,
that
yeah.
button, you're going to have the option to automatically empty the trash every 30 days, which, by the way, deleting photos, they automatically delete after 30 days as well. But much like the trash, you can go in and manually empty it anytime you want to. But what I was working towards are those eyes,
Yeah.
because it is very important. And you pointed out the ability to remove individual applications using the Mac's built-in tools. And that would be the very first thing listed. And, look, I'm not embarrassed to say that the applications count on my Mac right now, as we're speaking, is 137.65 gigabytes.
Oh, wow.
That's-
Let's check mine. Oh,
That's how much space is being used by applications on this Mac right at this moment. But I can
fabulous.
click your aforementioned little eye. It's an eye in a circle next to applications. Next to that 137 gigabyte. And it's very much like the app. Well, this would be under storage on your iPhone as well. The ability to
Yes.
go through and see how much storage individual apps are taking and to remove them. So when you click that little I, you get a list of all the applications. And by the way, then it tells you if they're Universal apps or they're Apple Silicon apps or Intel
Yes,
apps
very
or
useful.
or
Yeah.
what have it's very useful. Apparently Steam is still an Intel app. Huh. I did not know that. Well, you get this list of apps installed on your Mac, and the largest one on my Mac right at the moment is Final Cut Pro at 6.62 gigabytes. If I decide I no longer need Final Cut Pro on this particular Mac, which in truth I probably don't, I can select it and then I can click delete. And the Mac will take care of tossing that 6.62 gigabytes in the trash. And that's when you might still end up with a little bit of cruft left over, because the Mac does not do what App Cleaner does. It doesn't do what Hazel does. It doesn't do what Pear Cleaner does. It doesn't say, hey, here's all this other stuff. Do you want me to get rid of that too? It just says, oh, Final Cut Pro, boom, gone. iMovie, 3.96 gigabytes, boom, gone. So it is a useful tool, and it is a good way to hone in on what apps might be taking up the most amount of space, but it doesn't take it to that next level that App Cleaner and Pear Cleaner and Hazel do. But going on to the other I's that you mentioned, Darren, as you go down that list, there is books, documents, iCloud Drive, mail, messages, music creation, photos, podcasts, trash. Trash is listed there. And then you can also click the little I next to Mac OS, although there's nothing you can do with that. It just shows you how much space it's taking on the drive. But you can click those little I's next to documents, and you can, much like you can with the Finder, much like you can with Grand Perspective, you can sort these lists of large files in your documents folder. You can sort them by size, and I can see I've got a 6.43 gigabyte Audacity file for episode 467 of For Mac Guys Only is sitting there on my desktop. So I can go through and I can find these large files and determine if I can delete them, if I just want to show them in the Finder and move them elsewhere, or what I want to do with them. Which, by the way, all For Mac Guys Only episodes get archived to these drives off to my left here at some point. So I just haven't done it yet. But you can also...
Hazel.
Right, Hazel, exactly. Exactly. But it'll allow you to look at large files, downloads, unsupported apps. There's also a file browser in there, so you get a little mini Finder window in the documents when you click that I. And then you can do a similar thing with books and see why is there 1.16 gigabytes of books on this Mac. And I can go through and I can click them and I can delete the books that I no longer need or want on this Mac. Photos, music creation. Very often GarageBand or Logic download all these extra music files that you may never, ever need or use. Well, that's 3 gigabytes of files that you can clear off. It does not list animated wallpapers. It does not list, what did you say, movies, screensavers, and all that other stuff. It doesn't list all that stuff, but it is a good place to start. And I'm really happy that you brought this up, Darren, because this is a tool that you can use right now without needing to download App Cleaner, Pear Cleaner, or Hazel or anything else. So very good point.
Yeah, there's some quite good features in that storage panel there, actually. Yes, I was actually going to mention just a slight addition to what's in that storage panel, and right at the very top where it breaks down your storage and roughly what things are stored on your storage. One of the things that does confuse people is the bit that says system data, and often that can get rather large. And I have seen online people freaking out about why is my system data absolutely enormous, and they don't know that all of the temp files and the caches and all the other bits and pieces of detritus that we've been talking about, that's all included in system data, but people mistake it for being the operating system itself. So they are combined in the list, and when it gets big, people do freak out and they think something's wrong with my Mac. My system data is absolutely huge. But like we've been talking about, as we clean up and do a bit of a spring clean, and especially later on when we go into something like Onyx to clean the system out, a system level out, this is where you can come back to this panel and you should see your system data reduce quite drastically down to just effectively what the operating system is taking up then, so that then you can be sure that your Mac isn't broken after all, and your system data is fairly normal. So it does freak people out, but there's quite a lot included in that system data size there, but that's what I would normally suggest. I go through, when I do a spring clean, this is why I do the operating system side first. And I'll check this storage layout there to see what is included. And often system data can be quite big. And then after I've done a clean, I can come back to this panel and see how well I've done. And I usually would see the system data go down rather drastically. So my system data now is currently 3.2 gig. And I've seen people posting their system data at enormous amounts, 100 gig or something like that. So it's like, okay, yeah, there's some cleaning to do there. Yeah, funny enough, I just looked at my applications as well, Mike. You've got 137 gigs worth of applications,
Yeah.
and I have 18. Isn't that nice? I have 18 gigs.
You don't even want to know what I have.
My system data is currently sitting at 81 gigabytes. So there you go.
There you go, 81 gigabytes, yeah. So I've just recently done a clean on my Mac yesterday, funnily enough. So that's why mine's down to 3.2 now. So there you go. You can see that the cleaning works.
And to that point, very often you can reduce the system data by just simply rebooting your Mac. That's one way you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Turn it off and on again.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
that clears up stuff. Rebooting your Mac from time to time, even though I very seldom do that thing, but rebooting from time to time can actually clear up your system data for sure. I have also found that reinstalling the latest point update will clear that stuff up. So that's just a quick way to do it. If you don't want to dig around in your system library folders, just reinstall the latest update, and that very frequently clears up a lot of that system data that's just not clearing automatically like it should. I do want to talk about a tool that you use to clear up some of this stuff. It is a more advanced tool. However, there's one more thing I wanted to mention, and that is email. And the reason I want to mention email is because, we mentioned Grand Perspective, and I happen to offhandedly mention the inbox and how that can take up quite a bit of space on your drive if you are allowing your mail client to store your mail offline. Even though most email accounts these days are IMAP, and what IMAP basically means is that in general, it keeps your email stored on the server, right? Mail clients like Apple Mail and Mozilla Thunderbird still like to keep things efficient and fast by keeping offline copies of your mail if you let them. Now, the other benefit of this is it also allows you to read and preemptively respond to, even if you're offline, emails when the connection to that server is severed. So if the service is down, if your internet's down, whatever, you can still open and read emails and respond to them if you want to. Those responses will just sit in your outbox until you reconnect, and then it goes on its way. That's kind of the point of offline mail in a very, very small nutshell. It's also sometimes called offline use. So in Thunderbird, for example, which is the email client that I use, you can select the properties of a folder, and under synchronization in the properties of that folder, you can check a box and say, select this folder for offline use. That's on a folder by folder basis. You can do that. You can say, this particular folder, I don't want it to be offline use. This particular folder, I do. And that means, again, that Thunderbird will download a full and complete copy of that particular folder from the mail server and then refresh or update that download as new mail comes in or old mail is deleted. But you can also, in Thunderbird, go into your account settings and you can enable message synchronization globally. So you can tell Thunderbird to sync all messages, only the most recent messages, and you can also tell it not to download messages over a certain size. So you can have very granular control over how large these offline folders can get when you use a mail client like Thunderbird. It's very, very flexible. But the settings that you select determine how much space on your Mac's drive those offline folders are going to take. So adjusting those settings, if your mail client allows you to adjust those settings, you can actually increase or decrease the amount of storage usage on your Mac just because you're checking, sending and receiving email on your Mac. Now, to my knowledge, and I kind of dug into this a little bit beforehand, I don't really use Apple Mail that much. I use it for secondary accounts. But to my knowledge, Apple's mail client does not give you that kind of granular control. It does download and store your messages for offline use, but you can't fine-tune how it does so like you can with Thunderbird. And of course, regardless of the email client that you use, if you create local folders, or as Apple Mail calls them, on my Mac folders, those will always take up space on your Mac storage drive, regardless of how you have everything else set. So in Thunderbird, those are called local folders. In Apple Mail, they're called on my Mac folders. But anything you put in there is going to be stored on that particular Mac and not synced to any other Mac that you might have Apple Mail or Thunderbird installed on. But your mail can actually be a very large user of storage space on your Mac without you realizing it. And something like Grand Perspective can quickly highlight that to you as you see these giant blocks and you hover over it and it says, oh, that's my inbox. Well, that might be something that you want to go in and kind of fine tune the settings of. Now, one last thing on that is you can rebuild your folders. So if it does take up a lot of storage space, you can go in and you can rebuild a folder. Both Apple Mail and Thunderbird allow you to do this. And that will essentially recreate the index files that support that folder and potentially reduce the size. And you can also compact folders to reduce the size as well, so that as you delete and move messages around from folder to folder, there's empty space left in there. And compacting those folders will reduce the storage space that they use as well. So I just wanted to mention that real quickly. Not everybody uses a mail client anymore these days. A lot of people just go straight to the web. I do still happen to use mail clients. Like I said, I use Thunderbird. A lot of folks use Apple Mail. And if you do use those, just know that with the size of inboxes these days, Google gives you 30 gig these days, I think, of storage space. Apple gives you, minimum 5 and potentially way, way more, depending on how much storage space you're buying. Your mail might be taking a significant amount of storage space on your Mac's internal drive. So
that's it. Especially if if not looked at it for a while, end up with a large mail database. Like you said, I use Apple Mail. So I keep it reasonably clean, but I was going to mention that one of the things that both Onyx and later on when we go to the super scary thing that we can use called Mole, which is a new cleaner tool. One of the optimizations that both of those can do is to optimize your mail database and clean up your mail stacks and so on. So that instead of you having to hunt through using Grand Perspective where the big mail files might be stored, you can rely on these apps to go and clean that off for you. So that's one of the other options that makes it quite an easy option to clean up your mail through both Onyx and Mel.
You're right. Onyx will, there is a toggle in there to rebuild your mail folders,
That's
which
it. It's an
is,
optional toggle. Yeah,
yeah,
that's it.
but only Apple Mail. So
Only Apple Mail, of
these
course.
tools like Onyx only work if your default mail client is Apple Mail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to say, I don't know if you mentioned it, but I mean, the get account info on the mailbox and Apple Mail actually works pretty good as far as like showing you all the size of all the
Yeah.
folders as well as the,
It'll show you what sort of state you're in. Yeah, that's it.
yeah, I mean, it shows it. I mean, like I did it on one, I don't know which, but it shows the inbox, which is like in this particular mail, it's 612 meg, but I mean, it shows all the other folders along with it, which is
Yeah.
pretty slick too. And then the overall storage and the quota limits and stuff like that. So
Yeah. That is
Yeah.
actually a really good tool in Apple Mail, and Thunderbird has that tool as well.
yeah,
It's especially important if you have a mail account like I do that only has a minimal amount of storage space. So, for example, I have one mail account that has 10 gigabytes, which is a perverse amount of storage space for email,
yeah,
right? But
right,
in today's world, with 30 gigabyte or more mail accounts, 10 seems kind of light. Well,
yep,
both Apple Mail and Thunderbird will show you, hey, this account only allows you to store up to 10 gigabytes of mail. You are, and this beautiful little thermometer that they have in there, you're using
yeah,
4.46 gigabytes of this.
yeah,
You may want to clean this up. And then, like you said, it shows all your folders underneath it, which, again, I have a crazy amount of folders underneath mine.
yeah, I
But
do too.
in any event, yeah, there's all kinds of amazing tools in there, not the least of which is rebuilding the folders. But also, like I said, in the case of Thunderbird, the ability to fine tune how much it downloads so that you're not downloading an entire inbox that goes back 20 years. You're only downloading the last 30 days or 60 days. And
Right.
the rest of it might be there. You just won't be able to read the message until you click it, and it forces the download of it.
Yeah. I think it's also a good idea generally to keep your inbox quite small.
Oh, blah, blah, blah.
A small number
Yeah.
of messages, because that's the thing. I mean, I have seen machines that are crawling to a halt, generally because they've got 67,000 messages in their inbox, and every
Wait,
time you do
only
an operation,
67,000?
I know.
Only
It's
67,000?
I think I've
Yeah.
got 12 currently in my inbox, so I'm doing pretty well. I'll try to
It
get
sounds
to
like a
inbox zero
problem.
occasionally. That's it. You might have a bit of a problem there, Mike. You might be needing to do a bit of a cleanup.
The thing is, if I did that, and I have one password with most of it, but there's sometimes where I'll have an app that I'll need to reinstall, and the only place I'll have the license code is in email from several years ago or whatever. So,
Oh yeah, it's a really good idea, like you said earlier on, Mike, to keep copies of all your licenses for.
yeah, I
stuff
do
that you don't-
usually in one password, but
Yeah.
there's always one.
There's always one.
Yeah, yeah, that I
Yeah,
forgot.
I've tried to make sure, because I've switched over to using Apple passwords now, and I make a special category in there. I only use the notes field for it, so it just means that it's you can still use it for things like license codes. So you can just use a search in there. So there's no special fields like there is in 1Password, which is a really nice field way of storing your serial numbers and so on.
Yeah.
For things, but you can do a similar thing in Apple's password app just by using the notes field, and just because you don't have to put in all the data for all the fields, so you can use just a naming structure to store your license codes in there. So that's what I use. And I've been very good lately to make sure that I've stored all of my license codes in there, so that I don't have to search through old emails to try and find old license codes.
Well, to Eric's point, sometimes the email is the only way to get it, though, because there are many developers who provide the link to download within the email as well. And
Yeah.
I
that's
do,
the
yeah, yeah,
only way you can get the file that
Yep.
is tied to you, because they
Yeah.
don't necessarily have a license code, but the binary that they provide you is linked to your purchase. So,
Special URL. Yeah.
continuing this episode's tradition of how I do things versus how you do things, as I guess another little quick tip is within my mail account, I have a folder called
yeah,
licenses. And
yeah.
underneath licenses, I've created a series of subfolders, each for a particular developer. And as I upgrade the original
Okay, yeah,
purchase,
yeah,
plus every upgrade goes into that folder, and I actually flag the messages that have the important information in them. So there's other messages in there, here's your receipt, here's this, here's that, but the ones that have the important information are the ones that get flagged, so I can very quickly find them. And then, not to harp too much on it, but for the few messages that I forget to move in there, or if there's a developer, it's like a one-off type thing, I just throw it in the licenses folder. I don't create a separate folder for them. Thunderbird has a really lovely quick filter feature that at the top of any folder, there can be 300,000 messages in it, but at the top of any folder, if I type in just any particular keyword or part of a keyword, it will instantly
yeah.
filter down that folder of messages down to only those that are relevant to match that keyword I've filtered out.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I really love it's not a search. It's literally a filter. It just filters down what you're viewing without doing any kind of search. And then you can quickly find that message. But I like to use the licenses folder with subfolders for each of the developers that I regularly purchase from. And that works pretty well for me. And then I do, yes, also keep the installers offline on that public external drive that I mentioned. And in there, I keep a plain text copy of the email message that had the license code in it. So digital pack rat right here.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Two other things, and we danced around this just a minute ago, Darren, and that is Onyx, and then an interesting app, if you want to call it an app. It's actually a terminal application that you use or have used recently that you discovered and have been pretty happy with. Who would like to take on Onyx and what it can do for you? And maybe this is Darren too. But then we'll throw it over to Darren to talk about this last app before we wrap things up on this.
Yeah, well, I suppose I could give the overview of what I use Onyx for. To be honest, Onyx and Mole, which is the other app that you were talking about there, can do very, very similar things. Their approach is different and how they're made is very different. But Onyx is quite a nice, friendly way to clean up system level stuff. So that includes all your app caches and temporary files and other bits and pieces. And there are optional things that you can also delve into in there. If you, again, like click on the little eyes next to some of these functions that are not turned on, so you can discover what they do. And you should really read those, because the things that aren't turned on by default, there's another possibly there be dragons moment. Whereby you would regret doing it if you didn't quite know what you were doing. So when you're launching Onyx, it's a very good tool to give a nice quick system maintenance cleanup and a slight optimize there. With the default settings, you can pretty much just click go and let it do its thing. So that's its defaults are nice and safe. It's when you dig in and start to turn on the optional stuff that you may have to have your wits about you a little bit more. But Onyx is definitely a really nice tool that will allow you to clean up your system level stuff. So yeah, that's how I use Onyx. I'd recommend people use it, but only delve into the deep scary stuff if you're happy to read up on how these things work and to make sure that you know what you're doing before you click go. But with the defaults, you're pretty much good to go with Onyx for cleaning up your system.
Well, okay. And to go back to what you said a
Nice.
moment ago, Onyx very clearly says this is literally what they put in the app. Read the Onyx user guide very carefully before modifying these settings. That is
Exactly.
super important because, yes, there are dragons. It is a very nice, I like the way you said it, it's a very nice, friendly interface. And that's something that Onyx has always been well known for. It's well developed software and it's developed for a broader user base, just not, it's not just for the uber nerds, it's for
Yeah.
everybody, which I like. Now, one thing I did want to point out is what you just said is the default settings. Sometimes the default settings are things that by themselves may be scary. So, for example, under maintenance, under cleaning, there's applications and there's internet and then there's other. Just like there is in system settings, there's little eyes next to all of these, and you can read what those things will do. Like, why is applications on? What is that going to do? What if I say run this task? What is it going to do to my applications?
Let's see.
It's important to understand what it's going to do before you do that.
Absolutely.
And if you're not
Yep.
sure, if you don't understand, move that
Don't do
slider
it.
over and just and turn it off. It's as simple as that. You can turn on or off any of the settings very, very easily. And that's literally just under the maintenance tab. But there is a maintenance tab, utilities, files, security. Security is actually kind of handy for no other reason than to tell you if your firewall's on, if gatekeeper's on, if file vault is on, system integrity protection. It will tell you if these are on and give you the option to turn them on if they're not. For example, I don't turn on file vault and it's prompting me to turn it on. I'm not going to click that button because I don't turn on
I
file
don't use
vault.
it.
But the firewall is on, but I can flip the little slider and turn it off if I want. I can also turn on or off the check for security responses and on or off whether I want background security improvements installed automatically. So it does break down in very human-friendly terms what some of these things mean. And to their credit, you can, as it says, read the documentation. You can read the documentation to learn more about what some of these things mean if you're not sure. So it's a very nice tool from Titanium Software that I think is a nice, do I want to say essential app? It's a nice essential app for people to have on their Macs.
Yeah, I'd go along with that.
Yeah.
I'd say it's essential for a spring clean because you wouldn't want to clean up everything else and then just leave your OS in a messy state and just clean everything else up. That's doing a half a job. That is.
It leaves you in the default state of a Windows user.
Wow. Oh God, I wouldn't go that far. No.
But let's talk about this other utility that you've been using and playing around with. It's something you recently discovered. I think it was just like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
it. I've only been using it for about 3 weeks. Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, I've just recently discovered it.
This is definitely a Here Be Dragons app, though. Let's just be
Oh
clear
yes,
about that.
yes,
This is
yes.
this is the app for the uber nerds.
That's right. If you are attempting to dive into what Mole can do, you definitely need to rig your ship to go on the high seas so that you make sure that you can weather the potential dragons that are out to get you. If you're not quite sure what you're doing, then exactly, there be dragons. Don't go near this. Don't go near it. Don't do it. It's
Don't do it.
too dangerous. But there are several advantages to it. It's not, as you say, Mike. It's not even well. It doesn't pretend to present itself as a traditional Mac app as
There's no
we would
GUI.
normally. There's no There's no GUI. So
That right there.
Yeah.
there you go. That's scary. That will scare a few people off. So there you go. It's a terminal application, and also you have to be wary of installing terminal applications through the terminal. So you have to know what you're doing even before you install this. So I'd recommend that you make sure that you're if you do want to install Mole and use it, that you only do it through a trusted link, or you search for it yourself to see the actual owner's GitHub page of this application to install it from, and don't try to install it using any other link you might have found on the interweb somewhere, which may point you to something that isn't actually a fully ratified version of Mole, and it could be something else nefarious lurking out there. So be careful even before you install it, actually. So when you install this application, you actually use a command in the terminal called curl. And this is a standard Unix command.
Already
which,
right there. Come on, Darren.
There we go. So you have to go off to the terminal and use a curl command that you copy and paste from a trusted source to install Mole into the application, into the well, it goes into some secret little folders that are hidden into your Mac's Unix core, so you can see where things are going down, which road we're going down here. So yeah, so once you've got it installed and you've run your curl command and from a safe place, one of the advantages of Mole is it's exceptionally small because it's a terminal app. It's exceptionally fast, and it can do all of the functions of all of the tools that we've talked about. So that's one of the other advantages, because it can uninstall software, it can do optimizations, it can do system level checking, it can do OS level cleaning, it can do large file scanning, it can do so all of the separate apps we've talked about previously. Mole can do all of those functions, but like I say, you have to be careful what you choose. But one of the two main parts of Mole that I've been using is there's an optimizer section and a cleaner section. So this is where you've got to be a little bit careful. When you run one of those functions, you can run it in pretend mode. And what it will do is it will go off and it will figure out what it would clean if you let it. But it doesn't do any cleaning. It just lists all the things it's deciding it needs to do to optimize your system. So then you can review it before you say go and say, okay, I trust this. This is doing all the right things that I would normally do, and here's all the commands it's doing. But the downside is it's not very modular. So when you do choose to do an optimized session, it just goes through and optimizes everything. It just does the lot. It just does everything. So you've got to be sure of what it's going to do is what you want it to do. But once you've reviewed it, and I've reviewed it a couple of times, and I've gone through the system logs of the things it's changed, and it does do a very, very good and thorough and deep job of doing things like optimizing and cleaning. So for those that are brave and can get their boats into a good shape so that they can go onto the high seas and fight those dragons if they turn up, then this is possibly the app for you, because it does all of the functions of all the other apps combined that we've talked about in one go.
So it's a tiny app. It's a tiny little
Super
terminal
scary.
app. It's very, very scary. It's kind of like the rabbit of Carabanog from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Don't let it go for the throat.
It's just a fluffy little mole. It's just a fluffy with big sharp teeth.
That's it.
It does have a super cute logo, I'll have to admit. Very, it is literally like the White Rabbit
It looks
in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Monty Python, White Rabbit, exactly.
Yes.
You just need the holy hand grenade.
Holy hand grenade. But it is a very useful tool. It is not for the faint of heart. It is relatively easy to install if you're comfortable with certain terminal commands like curl. But once it's installed, the process of running it is pretty straightforward. In fact, I did pull up their GitHub page while you were talking there, Darren, and basically the commands are broken down on this page. The command is not mole, it's actually MO. All right. So from
Yes,
the
it's
terminal, you're
there's a
running.
shorthand. You can use the shorthand NO. So when you first run it, you should, well, in fact, every time you do a session with Mole, you should you should type mo space upgrade to make sure you're using the latest version. So
Oh, good point. Yeah.
as versions of macOS update, you want to use the latest version of Mole to understand what's been changed in the latest version of macOS that you use, because it is maintained and updated quite frequently. So, good idea to do that first.
There's so when you run a terminal command, there's the command itself, and then there are options you can add to that command. I guess that's probably the best way to put it. And then there are switches or flags that you can set as you run the command. And there's a very important flag or switch that you can add to a mole command, and that is -- dry run.
That's the
And
one.
again, this is documented on their site. So, for example, if you're going to go through the cleaning process, there is a command line switch, dry run, that you can tack on to the end of that command to make sure that it'll run, it'll do its job, it'll tell you what it's going to do, but it won't actually perform any actions until you run it again and say, without the dry run switch on
Yeah,
it.
do it for real this time.
Yeah.
That's right. It lets you review what it's going to do before it's going to do it.
Yeah. So super powerful. You've got, well, okay. I said there's no GUI, but there actually is an interactive menu according to this. So you get this wonderful terminal-based interactive menu to work with the app. But there's a deep cleanup, as you mentioned, already uninstalled app leftovers, or that cruft I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
There's the remove installed apps. There's the refresh caches and services, Visual Disk Explorer, which I imagine probably looks a little like the top command in Unix, where you see all your running
A
services.
little bit, yeah, but that's right. But for files instead, so it shows you things based on size and frequency of use and so on. So
Yeah, and so there's a number of different commands in here. Very powerful tool, and one that if you are comfortable with terminal commands, if you're comfortable with doing this type of thing, especially with the if you run it, this is going to happen results of what typically happens with terminal commands. But it's available on GitHub. It is it's open source, and it's available free for anyone who would like to try it. So we'll put a link to the Mole project in this episode show notes, as well as links to all of the other apps that we've talked about this episode, including Daisy Disk and the Final Cut Pro Library Cleaner and Hazel and Grand Perspective, which, by the way, is available in the App Store or direct from the developer. A couple ways you can get that one, and all the other apps that we talked about as I rediscover them while editing the show. So anything else that either of you wanted to bring up when it comes to spring cleaning your Macs and getting them ready for the new year?
there was just one I was going to mention, which is pertinent to what may or may not happen in macOS 27 when the Intel stuff starts to be taken out of macOS. So that is to use the System Information Application list. So when you go to the Apple menu and you hold the Option key down, one of the items on the Apple menu changes to System Information. And if you click on that, it's a built-in tool into macOS, and it will show you lots of details about your Mac. And one of the sections in there is Applications List. And that's a particularly interesting one because it will list all of your applications, and specifically there'll be a column there that says kind. So when you click on the kind column and organize the search by kind, then you can list how many Intel apps you have installed. So this is not terribly important now, but although it can be quite useful as part of a cleanup process to make sure you upgrade all of your current applications that you are using that are Intel based, so that they're using the ARM based versions of the apps that you upgrade to, or to find out the apps that you have installed that you may not use anymore, but they're still lurking there. They're still like Intel apps. So if you can get down to a clean point of view whereby your macOS in its current form doesn't have any Intel apps installed, apart from the system level ones, which will be taken care of later on, that means you're pretty much done and dusted, ready to upgrade to macOS 27 when the time comes. So I just say to review all of the apps that you've got installed, to specifically look for Intel apps that you may have lurking there in your system that you didn't realize that you still have. Either you can uninstall with Pair Cleaner, or you can choose to upgrade the Intel apps to their ARM versions and so on, just to ready yourself so that you're ready for macOS 27 when it comes out later on this year.
Oh, and all of that is sound advice, but I did want to clarify one thing. What this transition from macOS 26 to 27 means is not that you won't be able to run Intel apps on your Mac. Rosetta compatibility will still be there in macOS 27. What won't be there is support for Macs running on an Intel processor. So this will be the first version of macOS that does not include support for any old Macs that are not Apple Silicon based. However, Rosetta, or Rosetta 2, will still be in macOS 27. So you will still be able to run Intel apps on macOS 27 for at least one more version, and I believe it might actually be 2 more versions of macOS. I think Rosetta is going to be in there through 28. But then it's going to be removed. So you do have a little bit of time to make the transition, but your advice is very sound, Aaron. If you're running on Apple Silicon, there's really no reason to wait to transition to either Universal or Apple Silicon apps if the developer has provided them. And if the developer is not providing them or is no longer around, then it's time to start finding alternatives.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, what steps do you go through when spring cleaning your Mac? Be sure to leave your experiences in the comments of this week's show notes found at formaceysonly.com. I do have a little bit of listener feedback. This actually made me super, super happy to get this email. This is from Dave P. And he wrote, "Hey, Mike and group, I have been a listener since I had a silver MacBook in 2009. Due to a 20-year work anniversary gift, I was able to finally get a new MacBook Air 15-inch. And by the way, in emails back and forth, he went with the blue, which I think is a fantastic color choice.
Yeah, I do too.
He wrote, I have selected 15 versus 13 since it will be my main computer, and it will move from upstairs to downstairs mostly. So far, it's working great, and he's going to test it and use the camera and microphone for a couple of podcasts that he does. So he's going to learn the Apple Creative Suite, since it does come with a 3-month trial. And he says, and this is what makes me happy, he says, still listening after all these years. Dave has been a phenomenal supporter of For Mac Eyes Only since forever. He not only supported and listened to the show, but he participated in our forums when we had forums. He's just been great amount of support, traded a number of emails with him throughout the years, and really thrilled that he's still out there listening. Thanks, Dave. That means the world to us. We have our official For Mac Eyes Only quick tip for this episode. Mozilla Firefox recently added a fantastic new feature to Firefox, which is a built-in free VPN. Once you sign into your Mozilla account and you turn it on, you can, with the flip of a switch, hide your location and your IP address by routing it through a secure proxy while you browse in Firefox. Now, the cool thing is that you actually get 50 gigabytes of protection every month. That resets every month, with the option to turn it on or off for specific websites. So once you turn on this free VPN function, you can then turn it off on an individual tab, or you can just turn it on a per tab basis, which is pretty cool. The not so cool thing is that even though this was introduced in Firefox 149 and expanded a bit in Firefox 150, which was just released, this new feature is progressively rolling out in the US, the UK, Germany, France, and Canada. Canada was just added with version 150. And it just so happens that it did not progressively roll out to me. But I still wanted to try it. Well, as with many things in the open source world, there's a workaround, of course, because even though those who are patient enough will eventually get it, those of us who are less than patient and live in one of the countries in which it's being rolled out can actually manually enable it right now. And here's how you do it. Open up any new tab in Firefox, version 149 or higher. Type about:config in the address bar and press return. Now at this point, a warning page may appear of the risks of proceeding. And yeah, like with Mole or Onyx, there are risks, especially if you incorrectly modify the wrong setting. That's important to point out. But at least with Firefox, you won't take down your entire Mac if you get it wrong. Now, if you are comfortable continuing, just click where it says accept the risk and continue. And then now in the box that's labeled search preference name, type in the following: browser.ip protection, that's one word, browser.ip protection.enabled. And when you do, you're going to see all the preferences that match. There happen to be 2 that match that when you type that in. We're only dealing with the one, and that's what I just read off there, browser.ip protection.enabled. And next to it, you may see the word false. Well, what you do is you just double click where it says false, or you click the little toggle button off to the right. When you do, you'll see it change from false to true. And at the same time, it's very instant. At the same time, you're going to see the little VPN button appear in the toolbar of Firefox. And that's it.
Cool.
With this preference switch to true, you just manually enabled the new VPN feature in Firefox. So with that enabled, I'm going to put a link in the show notes that covers how to use it. So that's my tip this week. I just did that myself when version 150 came out this week. And actually works really well. So
nice.
Much like Opera, there's now a built-in VPN feature in Firefox, and completely free, 50 gigabytes of data every month. Super cool.
Very, very cool.
And Eric, I think that brings us to our essential app this episode. And you mentioned that you had an essential app that you wanted to share with everyone.
Yeah, actually, and I changed it throughout the episode. Thinking, well, maybe I'll use this one. I don't know if this one's been used or not, but my essential app for this episode is one called Clop, and it's spelled CLOP. And I'm trying to think who makes the company, but it's actually a really it's actually a really nice app, and essentially it's not a one-trick pony so much. It's but it is an app that its main thing, it's made from the low tech guys. That's what it is. Its main reason for existing is to shrink your photos, or even actually, I think, does it do video? I think it can convert video.
Oh, that would be cool.
But it does. It will shrink photo sizes down. And I used to use something called JPEG Mini and JPEG Mini Pro, which was really good at, I mean, it literally cut JPEG sizes down to a fraction without any noticeable change at all, looking at the photo. But it was limited to JPEGs, and it wasn't, they did kind of jump to a subscription too and whatnot. But then I discovered this Clop, and this does PNGs as well as others. And it really, it really brings down the PNG. I mean, a lot of times it'll be a file could be several meg, and it'll bring it down to just a few K. So, and again, it's not, you don't really see it in the quality of the photograph or the picture. And so it's something I use, and the way that it works is you have a photo that you're working on and you have in the Finder, you just drag it and a little thing shows up on the screen. You drag it over that, and then it does its magic and replaces it with a smaller, it's essentially with a picture that takes up a lot less space, but it looks the same. Or you can even have it downscale the picture too, or convert it to different JPEG to PNG, PNG to HEIC, whatever sort of thing. So it's a slick app.
Cool.
Wow. I like that. I use an app called Image Optum, and that has always worked really well for me. I have noticed from time to time, so I use a system service to convert PNGs to JPEGs. Well, I just use the standard Mac. What is it? When you right-click a file. This became standard a little while ago. It's a quick action, convert image.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I've used that to convert PNGs to JPEGs just on the fly when I need a JPEG real quick. And then I'll use Image Optum on them, and I'll notice a color shift. So it'll actually be a really nice, rich color image as a PNG and as the converted JPEG. But once I Image Optum it, the colors shift and it becomes very dull and muted. And
that's weird.
I have to revert back or end up opening it in like Affinity Photo and exporting it separately from there.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure why that is, but I'm definitely interested in giving Clop a try to see if that does a better job of it. I'm also super intrigued by the optimizing video files functionality of it.
Yeah.
But I pulled up their comparison chart on lowtechguys.com, which I love that name, by the way.
Lowtechguys.com.
And even the free version allows you to optimize video files. You can do up to 5 per session.
Ooh.
You can optimize image files, and you can optimize PDFs. This actually could work really well for doing that PDF optimization that I have been using PDF Pen for. So this looks like
you can check it out.
A really good option.
I think it's available on SetApp as well. So if you have SetApp, you can just dig it out of there and use it. So
yeah. And if you do go for the Pro version, which has no limitations on it at all, it's $15.
Yeah, no, it's terrific.
Yeah.
It really is. No, I love it. It's something I used to, like you said, I used Image Optum and I used, JPEG Mini, for JPEGs and stuff like that, and Image Optum for other ones. And now I just use Clop. So it's been really good.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look at that as well, because I'm in the same boat with JPEG Mini, and they've got a new version that is sort of forcing you to upgrade to the Pro version. I'm not entirely sure whether I'll go down that route. So this looks like a very good option instead of me upgrading JPEG Mini, perhaps. But I'll check it out. Yeah, definitely. Sounds good.
By the way, lowtechguys.com has the most awesome logo. It is literally a manual typewriter, a portable manual typewriter with the lid flipped up on it so you can port it around. And on top of that, it's a very 70s inspired themed website. I love this. So lowtechguys.com, the app that we're talking about is Clop, and we will put a link to that in the show notes. With that said, that's going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, I do love to get your letters. So if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share a software or hardware problem with your Mac, be sure to leave your favorites in the comments of this week's show notes found at formaceyeesonly.com, or drop me a line, mike@formaceyeesonly.com. And do be sure to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel at youtube.com/FMEOTV. And click that little notification bell so you can find out when we are going live. You can join the chat room, and you can catch all the behind-the-scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Eric and Darren for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time.